Welcome back to our read aloud of The Miraculous Journey of Edward Tulane, a book that I have, but I don't have the cover for. This is a story that it would be good for you to listen to from the beginning. If you're listening to this right now, I would encourage you to go back to the previous video. I'll try to post a link to it down below, and it'll be on our playlist of videos as well that you can find on my YouTube channel, so that you're caught up. We are reading about a China rabbit. He's a rabbit who's made basically out of dishes, but his ears and his tail are real fur. He is a toy who belongs to a girl named Abilene, and he was given to her by Abilene's grandmother, who has a cool name that I've forgotten. I remember she's French. Oh, her name is Pellegrina. Okay. So, some connections I've already noticed with our previous book from the same author, Kate DiCamillo, is that we have a magical, sort of unusual animal. In Kate DiCamillo, we have a mouse that can talk. In our book here, we have a toy animal that can think. He doesn't seem to talk very much yet. I'm curious if he's going to be able to become a real animal or something like that. So, Chapter 2. Picture on Chapter 2 has what looks like Edward being hugged by Abilene. And in this manner Edward's days passed one into the other. Nothing remarkable happened. Oh, there was an occasional small domestic drama. Once, while Abilene was at school, the neighbor's dog, a male brindled boxer inexplicably named Rosie, came into the house uninvited and unannounced, and lifted his leg onto the dining room table, spraying the white tablecloth with urine. Oh boy. He then trotted over and sniffed Edward, and before Edward even had time to consider the implications of being sniffed by a dog, he was in Rosie's mouth, and Rosie was shaking him back and forth vigorously, growling and drooling. Nice color picture here in our book. You don't see those very often in print chapter books like this. What a treat. Fortunately, Abilene's mother walked past the dining room and witnessed Edward's suffering. "Drop it," she shouted to Rosie. And Rosie, surprised into obedience, did as she was told. Edward's silk suit was stained with drool and his head ached for several days afterwards, but it was his ego that had suffered the most damage. Abilene's mother had referred to him as it, right? She said, "Drop it, not drop him." And she was more outraged at the dog urine on her tablecloth than she was about the indignities that Edward had suffered at the jaws of Rosie. Seems like Edward thinks of himself as a person who deserves to be treated with respect, which might be hard for the people around him to do, since most of them just think of him as a toy. We talked in the last chapter about adults condescending to Edward, acting like they're better than him, and even talking to him is just kind of pretending to care, right? And then there was the time that a maid, new to the Tulane household and eager to impress her employees with her diligence, came upon Edward sitting in his chair in the dining room. "What's this bunny doing here?" she said out loud. Edward did not care at all for the word bunny. He found it derogatory to the extreme. Derogatory means it's like making fun of someone or making someone feel worse than they really are. Bunny. He doesn't think of himself as a bunny. Seems like Edward has a very strong opinion of himself. The maid bent over him and looked into his eyes. "Humph," she said. She stood back up. She put her hands on her hips. "I reckon you're just like every other thing in this house, something needing to be cleaned and dusted." And so the maid vacuumed Edward Tulane. She sucked each of his ears up into the vacuum cleaner hose. She pawed at his clothes and beat his tail. She dusted his face with brutality and efficiency. And in her zeal to clean him, she vacuumed Edward's gold pocket watch right off his lap. The watch went into the maw of the vacuum cleaner with a distressing clank that the maid did not even seem to hear. When she was done, she put the dining room chair back at the table, and, uncertain about exactly where Edward belonged, she finally decided to shove him in among the dolls on a shelf in Abeline's bedroom. "That's right," said the maid. "There you go." She left Edward on the shelf at a most awkward and inhuman angle. His nose was actually touching his knees, and he waited there with the dolls twittering and giggling at him like a flock of demented and unfriendly birds, until Abeline came home from school and found him missing and ran from room to room, calling his name. "Edward!" she shouted. "Edward!" There was no way, of course, for him to let her know where he was, no way for him to answer her. He could only sit and wait. When Abeline found him, she held him close, so close that Edward could feel her heart beating, leaping almost out of her chest in its agitation. "Edward," she said. "Oh, Edward, I love you. I never want you to be away from me." The rabbit, too, was experiencing a great emotion, but it was not love. It was annoyance that he had been so mightily inconvenienced, that he had been handled by the maid as cavalierly as an inanimate object, a serving bowl, say, or a teapot. So Edward is objecting here that the maid is treating him like a toy, like a not a person, which again is interesting for a toy to object to. The only satisfaction he had from the whole affair was that the new maid was dismissed immediately. That means fired. Edward's pocket watch was located later, deep within the bowels of the vacuum cleaner, dented but still in working condition. It was returned to him by Abeline's father, who presented it with a mocking bow. "Sir Edward," he said, "your timepiece, I believe." The Rosie affair and the vacuum cleaner incident, those were the great dramas of Edward's life. Until the night of Abeline's 11th birthday, when, at the dinner table, as the cake was being served, the ship was mentioned. I wonder, readers, what the ship is going to turn out to be, and how it is going to turn out to be a greater drama than the affair of, what do they call it? The Rosie affair, Rosie the dog, and the vacuum cleaner incident. How could we possibly have greater drama than that? It seems like so far in Edward's life, the things that are important to him, the big events in his life are really small. It seems like we have a character who needs to go on an adventure. He needs something big to happen to him. So I'm excited to see what that big thing is. I mean, the name of the book is The Miraculous Journey. Miraculous, that's the adjective form of the word miracle, which means something impossible that happens in spite of the fact that it's impossible. So something impossible, something amazing is going to happen to Edward Tulane, and it's going to be a journey, a word that means he's going to take a trip. So an impossible trip. I wonder where and how and why this trip is going to be. See you next time, readers.